Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest is Steve Markman, president and founder of Markman Speaker Management. Welcome back, I should say, to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jonathan. Happy to be here.
I know we were talking just before we came on, and you're old hat. You've been on the show a couple of times over the years. I know it's been a little bit of time. So, for our audience, a refresher: what is it that you do at Markman Speaker Management?
Sure, thanks. So basically, I started this business in 1994. Hate to reveal my age, but or show my age. But so that was now in my 31st year, and ostensibly, what I do is I help my clients get speaking engagements of all types in all industries. And primarily, what I do, Jonathan, is what is a marketing PR function as opposed to a speakers bureau, traditional speakers bureau. I have a small division of 50 or so paid speakers who want to be keynoters. But about 50, 55 speakers on my website's keynote speaker list. But primarily, my business is focusing singularly on finding unpaid speaking engagements for companies of all time. And by company, I mean it could be a solo practitioner, an entrepreneur like many of your listeners. It could be IBM, PayPal, Bank of America, just to name a few of the companies that I have done this for, typically brought in by the marketing department or PR department of those medium-sized to large companies to get speaking engagements for their executives. So your audience is probably wondering, well, why do people speak for free? And so I don't even like the word for free because 99%, this is a little known fact, 99%, and this is an unscientific study made by me, of speaking engagements are not paid. 99% are not paid. And so a lot of people wake up one morning and they say, geez, I got a lot of great stuff to say. I'm an expert on X, Y, and Z. I should get paid to speak because they see people getting paid, six figures to speak. And that's actually not the right approach for someone who is just starting out because unless you're the keynote speaker and written multiple books or Malcolm Gladwell, who's written, one or two very big bestsellers and is getting upwards to close to, 80 to $100,000 to speak for an hour. That's the rare exception, right? So what your audience is best or most likely to want is exposure to their services. Unless they're a professional speaker that 90% of their income is from speaking, the people who I work for on the entrepreneurial level, entrepreneurs, consultants, coaches of all types in all industries, those folks really want to use speaking as a way for marketing, PR, and business development. And even the big companies, they all have that same thing in common: marketing, PR, business development. Build awareness for the firm and their products and services without doing a sales pitch in front of your target audience. So if you come away with a presentation and people come up and say, can I have your card? Or they call you, they go on your website, they go to LinkedIn and they go, I could use a person like this to help me or my company, then you've created what I call future income, right? Because you have now established a lead for a client that could lead to a lot of money. So you're not getting a check to actually speak. The check will come later, though, when you nab a client as a result of speaking.
So fascinating, and I agree with you entirely. Probably your unscientific 99%, that probably makes perfect sense. Um, but it sounds to me like what you are doing is essentially setting up events or opportunities for people to pitch their concepts, their ideas, their thought leadership to an audience that would be interested in perhaps engaging that person to dive a little bit deeper than, a 1 hour talk. And I guess just wondering, do those typically happen inside of companies, or are those companies bringing other audiences, other participants in to listen to the speaker? What's the dynamic and or what's the form framework for it? I think back to we used to host breakfast seminars where we would bring, clients together and other, associated people to listen to somebody talk on a topic. And, exactly to your point, at the end of the topic, several people would come up to the speaker and say, very interested in learning more, et cetera, et cetera. So is that the type of forum? And what's the makeup of the audience typically
Sure.
in these speeches?
Great question. So 95% of the placements that I make for my clients or that I teach them to make, and I'll get to that in a minute about how I help entrepreneurs, but almost all of these speaking opportunities are not inside companies. They are at public conferences. Most of those are held by associations. Others are held by conference organizations or conference companies, right? So there's a giant company called Informa,
Mhm.
Informa, and they have gobbled up Reed and a bunch of publishing companies over the years, and they are now the dominant force in holding conferences and trade shows. So that's one type, but the vast majority of speaking opportunities overall out there come from associations. So, fun fact, there are 37,450, but who's counting? Associations in the United States alone.
Wow.
Every one of those associations puts on an annual conference, and at least a third of those associations are big enough to have chapters all over the United States.
To do
So,
regional type of events and things on a
correct.
regular basis. Yep.
Right. So I'll give you an example. So I'm working with a guy. He is a author of a book on empathy, and he has a couple of different companies that he owns, and he wants to speak to both marketing and HR audiences. He has two different presentations. The ones for the HR, that his main target is he wants to speak to HR executives at companies, chief executive, the chief HR executive, the head of training, those sorts of things, to talk about empathy and the concepts about empathy and how to use it as a retention tool and increase productivity and be better management tools.
Mhm.
And so the Society for Human Resource Management is a great place for him to speak. They have three or four national conferences on different topics, subtopics within HR. And then they have SHRM New York, SHRM Boston, SHRM LA, SHRM
Mhm.
San Francisco, etc. And so what I do is I submit a speaker proposal on his behalf with all the things that I know you need and that they need, which is a presentation description, the bio, picture, and whatever else they need and other supporting documents. So I submit it to these call for speakers, which is basically a speaker application to many of these not only the annual conferences, the five or six that they have, but also to all the big city chapters, right? So he is speaking for the New Orleans chapter in a couple of weeks. He just spoke for the LA chapter. Uh, are they getting the 1,000 or 2,000 people at a big conference? No, but he is just as likely to get a client out of being the only speaker, the lunch speaker or the dinner speaker in front of 50 to 100 people on a Zoom, which costs him nothing because he doesn't have to get on a plane. Uh,
Mhm.
and we could talk about that in a few minutes also about sort of the trends of what's happening in the delivery mechanism. But that's basically those conferences are hungry for speakers, and they're not going to pay anybody except for the keynotes where they set aside a budget
A
for
budget for
a
that.
name
Mhm.
recognized person that people will say, "Oh, I want to hear that person." The bigger the conference, the higher the likelihood is that they're going to want a name person to attract more people to the conference. Well, at least they think it'll attract more people to the conference. Not convinced that that does either. But from a practical standpoint, as a way to build awareness in front of potential prospective clients and customers, speaking at these association conferences could be a panel. Panels are starting to go away more and more. More than likely, it's a breakout session. It could be a solo presentation at a consecutive session. More often than not, they're breakout sessions, and people have a choice of where to go, whether it's in person or online. So that's the vehicle that most speakers speak at. Occasionally, I will pitch them to a company, but it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Like you don't even know who do you even call. There's no
Right.
person in charge in a company. There's no chief
Of
speaker
securing
officer.
speakers. Right. Right.
Yeah, right.
Whose job is
So
that? Right.
it literally could be the executive assistant of the CEO. It could
Right.
be someone in marketing. It could be somebody that, somebody grabbed somebody in the hallway and say, hey, we need a speaker like in 2 months. Well, can you get this person? So it's all over the lot, and and it's a different industry completely. The paid speakers are the ones who are typically paid or out of the budget of the CEO, and they're the ones making the decisions. Whereas the conferences, if they're a chapter, they have a volunteer whose title is VP of Programming for the SHRM chapter of in New York City, for example, or the American Marketing Association chapter in Miami. So there's a VP of Marketing or I'm sorry, VP of Programming or Programming Committee who are all volunteers. On the big national conferences, there will be a director of conferences, and those are the people that I pitch.
So what I hear, and I suspect where your predominant value add to your clients is you cut through a lot of the static or noise or uncertainty of who that target person is. One, because of your experience doing it, and two, because, as you said, there's no chief speaker, security officer, or person in charge of finding those people in these organizations. Again, cutting through the clutter and hopefully targeting the right people. Tell us a little bit the model. You hear free and you hear. I would imagine that your speakers have some skin in the game, or is there a back end remuneration if you do secure opportunities for them, or how's that
Right.
model work for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I have, um, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not a traditional speakers bureau. I do have these 50 or 60 people listed. So traditionally, the speakers bureau business has been a commission only business. And so somebody gets 25 to 30% of whatever the speaker bureau negotiates for that
Yep.
person. In my case, that is true for those 50 or so people, but I don't proactively it's a list. It's a commodity business, basically. You
Mhm.
go to my website and people can
They
see.
want them, they come through you.
Right. But no, not necessarily because they
Mm.
could go, the business has
They're not
changed.
exclusive.
They're
Yep.
not exclusive, and so most people aren't unless you're Malcolm
Right.
Gladwell getting the six figures, and he may not even be, but some people are, and the big bureaus want you to be, but you can be on 10 or 12 different bureaus. The industry has changed radically because in the old days, pre internet, one had to go to a speakers bureau if you're a speaker. Now you have your own website and people can come directly to you. They don't have to pay a commission to anybody. And so the business is completely different. It's like buying a house. You don't need to have a broker anymore, right? You can just sell the house yourself. So the industry has changed. For me, and thank you for asking, basically I have two services for folks. One is the executive visibility speaking service, and that is a retainer of a 12-month contract, where during that 12 months, I proactively go out and I do all the heavy lifting. I identify all the different possible speaking engagements based on their industry, based on their geographies and their target audiences. The other one, which I think has really taken off in the last 5 or 6 years, and is potentially of interest to your audience, is what I call a CAS, which is a custom advisory service. And in that one, what I do, Jonathan, is I sit down with an entrepreneur, could be a marketing consultant, could be an HR consultant, could be a coach of some type. Typically, those are the people who do the CAS, and basically what that is it's a DIY program, right? It's do it yourself. So I spend 4 to 5 hours over 2 days teaching in a Zoom session the entrepreneur everything they need to know. Basically, it's 35-year brain dump of how to get speaking engagements, the techniques, the processes, the content, what you need, and how to develop that content. It's we call it in the trade the abstract, which is the presentation description.
Mhm.
Somebody might have one, they might have nine. I've had the breadth. And I help write that description. I don't write the speech, but I help write the description. And I help them basically market themselves because it's part sales, part marketing, right? And so, and it's part knowing the right people, but you can always find out there's high turnover. Okay, I don't want to overestimate how I have these magical contacts because I might this year and then next year they're gone. So
Right.
I do know organizations and how they work. We're on a worldwide basis because I place my speakers all over the world, and I have a ton of contacts that have been in their position for years. But there's generally a high turnover. The key thing is knowing who to call and what their title is and what their position is. And I teach that. I teach how to identify the right person. But even before that, how do you vet the right association?
Opportunities
How do
and
you write
right.
the right opportunity? Are they giving you a lot of baloney on the website, or do they really get 6,000 people? And there are ways to do that. So it's the tricks of the trades, the ins and out, to give
Fa-
themselves an edge. And I teach them everything they need to know. And I provide them with sample abstracts so they can use it as a model to help write. And I actually help them write it. And so when they're done, even help them write the email pitches, everything that they need to know to package themselves as a speaker, and it's at a much lower cost than the annual fee because it's sort of a one-time thing. But I'm available for follow-ups if they need help after it. And I've had
s-
marketing consultants, HR consultants. I had one person that I did at Abu Dhabi in the earlier days when I started doing this, who had quit his job as a banker and wanted to be like the uh, head or the best consultant in speaking delivery in the Middle East. Okay,
hmm.
so um,
So if somebody can define their niche, you can figure out how to get them an audience.
exactly, and I do
That's
pre-work on, what is and here's the key. It's not a class. It's not Tuesday at 3 o'clock. It is one-on-one, 100% customized to that individual, whatever their niche is, whatever there is. If you tell me that you are a marketing consultant for HVAC equipment, then I will find you all the HVAC conferences. We'll work together. We'll go online. We'll see how do you identify these? What are the sources of these opportunities? And hopefully it works. And then you get clients 2, 3 years later. I hear from people, they're all excited. They got their first speaking engagement and they got a client out of it. So that's what I want to hear. And that's my goal. The other advantage
fantastic.
that I can give is that I spent 10 years as the head of conferences for organizations like the conference board, which I now pitch on the other side of the fence, and also Comdex, which many of your listeners may know, a Boston-based organization that
For
had
trade shows,
200,000
right?
attendees, the largest trade show in the personal computer industry for many years. And I came up to Boston from New York to run their conference group. So I've been the head of conferences for different organizations, BIS, which was later bought by Forrester in the technology side. So I use knowledge of what a conference director is looking for because I was one. So I know what they want and how to approach them without making a sales pitch.
Fantastic. No better way than doing it than knowing what it works like from the inside. Steve Markman, it's been a pleasure. Sounds like a fascinating opportunity for anybody that's looking to get into speaking engagements. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about it, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Sure. They can go to my website, which also has my phone number and my email, but I'll give that too. It's www.markman, Markman, speaker.com. And they can also email me to smarkman@markmanspeaker.com. And all the different services I have on there, the custom advisory service for individual practitioners and larger companies, they're all on the website. Happy to have a no obligation call with anybody at any time.
Sounds great. Appreciate your time. Steve Markman, President and founder of Markman Speaker Management. It's been a pleasure having you back on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for your time and appreciate it.
Great. And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.